Well, welcome to the meat-scented Security Weekly studio, and this is the Security Weekly News wrap-up for the week of 25 July 2021. Patching, Pettipotum, Elon, Microsoft Defender, ransomware rules, Meteor, and more, as well as all show wrap-ups on this edition of the Security Weekly News wrap-up show.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. With the skills gap increasing, it's more important than ever to train your staff effectively and efficiently. Offensive Security provides training for your organization designed by the same minds behind Kali Linux. Here are two recent offerings from OffSec. OffSec Academy gives you the chance to earn industry-leading OSCP certification with dedicated one-on-one mentoring. You can also try Proving Grounds Enterprise, created exclusively by Offensive Security's InfoSec experts for highly realistic simulated networks. Visit securityweekly.com/offsec to learn more. Cyber criminals are working overtime. They're leveraging activity around the COVID vaccine to disguise phishing attacks, hoping to steal money or personal information from your employees or customers. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner is a free tool you can use right now to help protect your business and ultimately your reputation. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner analyzes your Office 365 accounts and identifies malicious emails that slipped past your gateway and into inboxes. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email. Use the Barracuda Email Threat Scanner for free right now at securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
Hello, I'm Doug White from Roger Williams University. I'm your host, and welcome to the Security Weekly News wrap-up show. All the show topics for the week. On Application Security Weekly number 159, John and Mike had Peter Klimek, the Director of Technology Office of the CTO at Imperva, on the show. Peter was on to talk about the adoption of serverless functions. And I saw that and I immediately got excited because I really, really I love serverless functions and Lambdas and all those kind of things. But it was on to talk about that and was talking about the real interesting part is how do you secure them? Because, Lambdas are a thing and they have been a thing and they're becoming a cloud thing. And they're a natural extension of APIs and other types of libraries. So they're cool, right? I mean, if there's all these Lambdas out there to do tasks for you, that's really nice. But they're really difficult to manage in some ways because they're sitting up there. You don't necessarily control them. I mean, maybe you do. But it's an interesting segment anyway. On Business Security Weekly number 224, Jason, Adrian, and Matt were doing my favorite episode of Business Security Weekly, where they review the Security Weekly 25 Index and talk about investments in the security space. Always my favorite show from them. I like to keep up with that. They actually have some pretty good investments there, and I made a little bit of money using those. So. But this is not financial advice. In the second segment, in modernization, security is a barrier and an incentive. Federal CISO DeRusha maps FISMA reform priorities. I don't even know what that means. Cybersecurity salaries update. That's a good one. Always interesting to see what's going on in the industry and make yourself feel bad, probably. On Enterprise Security Weekly 236, Adrian Paul and Tyler Shields brought on Dwayne Haynes. I looked it up. Dwayne Haynes, a consultant, data analytics at Aegon Transamerica. Dwayne was on to talk about the rise in ransomware attacks and campaigns against infrastructure, cyber talent deficits, and more. So again, an interesting segment. In the second segment, Stephanie Aceves, the Senior Director Threat Response SME Lead at Tanium, came on the show to talk about how security starts before detection and investigation. And we've been seeing more stories and more people talking about this kind of stuff, about how, security is not just a thing that, you stop things from happening. You have to think about it in advance and so on. A holistic approach to security that stresses the importance of good hygiene, and some discussion about Tanium and how Tanium is used in all this practice. In the third segment, they did the news. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 81, Jeff, Josh, Priya, and Scott they had Priya on for a couple of segments that was called Catching Up with Priya. They wanted to get her perspective on some recent litigations and legislation that impacts security and compliance. Always interesting when Priya's on. We've found that having attorneys on some of the shows. One of my friend Tom Leonardo was on Security Weekly a couple of weeks ago. Priya is often on this show to talk about legal issues. On Security Weekly News number 137, Jason Wood talked about China and their new vulnerability disclosure law, which there was also a news story about the U.S. this week I'll talk about a little bit later. But their new vulnerability law, which requires that vulnerabilities that are found during research be reported to the government and only to the government. And so that means that if you find some new bug in a piece of software, now it was unclear to us, did this mean that Chinese researchers who find bugs in American-made products have to report those to government? I presume that is exactly what it means. So the government wants to keep control of vulnerabilities and probably pick ones they want to use for their teams and not release those. On Paul's Security Weekly number 704 last night, up first was Alyssa Miller, the BISO at S&P Global. And just about the second I was thinking, what's a BISO? Alyssa was talking about BISOs and the growing trend to add this position in your organization. It's a business information security officer. I did see this title a couple of times. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. I saw another BISO title and I was like, that's the first time I've ever seen that title before. So it was very topical because I literally was just, I had just seen that term used and was going, what is that again? And there it was on Security Weekly. In the second segment, Michael Welch, the managing director at Morgan Franklin, was on to talk about how cyber physical attacks impact ill-prepared organizations and how to prevent the wrong people from accessing physical systems. I mean, I know I always tell people if they can touch it physically, you're toast. Like, just surrender now, because if they have access to your cabinets or they have access to your racks or your server rooms or whatever, they probably can get in. And when I used to do that stuff for physical pen tests, that was one of the reasons we were doing physical pen tests, because we realized that if I could climb in a window and get in the server room at 2:00 in the morning, pretty much I'm going to own the place by morning. Very relevant. And then third segment, the news. My favorite threat of the week is going to be patching. I know I've talked about patching a bunch of times before, but I saw this story about how the CISA had listed now the 30 top vulnerabilities being exploited, and it made me just get sort of that same, outrage and go outside and shake your fist at clouds kind of feeling that you get when you read this stuff. And the article I put a link to it, the article was talking about how the top 4 vulnerabilities that they had on their list, and then their list was based on how often these vulnerabilities were targeted, were all from between 2018 and 2020. So a lot of them were old. Now, the next 4 on the list were all from 2021. But the point, I think, of the article is, why are these antique vulnerabilities from 2018 still a problem? And of course, the answer, and you're probably shouting it at the screen. But, they aren't patched. So even though patches exist for these things, they aren't patched. I get it, okay? I know you're saying it's really easy to sit there in the studio, Doug, and smoke a cigar and say how easy it is to patch. But I actually get it. I support stuff too. And I often don't get around to patching it right away for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's just too much time. It's like, oh, this is going to take all day to do this, and I can't take the system down now. Or there's other people that are planning to use things, and I'm like, I can't reboot this right now. I can't restart this router. I can't restart this firewall right now because they're doing a research project or this class is meeting or whatever. Other times, I don't know what the patch is going to do. And I may want the patch, but I start reading about the patch and I start going, oh, wow, is this going to break stuff? And I can't risk an outage today because I only have an hour and it may take all day to fix it if it breaks. Now, it may work fine and it says it's going to take 3 minutes to install. Then and you've been there too, we've all been there. Then you install the patch, you follow the instructions, you install the patch, and boom, all of a sudden everything is down. It's like, oh, the email server doesn't work. I mean, next thing you know, while it's going on, you're on version 3.14 and everybody else on 7.62. And now it's going to take 3 rounds of updates just to catch up to the current version so you can install the patch. And, maybe in the morning, I'll jump right on this. Lather, rinse, repeat. And I know I should probably right now, instead of sitting here, be patching something. I assure you, something that I control somewhere is out of patch currency because, there's a lot of stuff out there. Even if it's just my TiVos at home, it probably needs to be patched. But instead, I'm here with you, and you should probably be patching something too. I mean, if you think about all the different devices at home and at work, you could probably spend about 10 hours a day just keeping up with the latest updates for your home stuff. And then there's that firmware update for your hot water heater that you've been meaning to install, but it says caution, may prevent hot water from working. And you're going, is this going to cause the hot water heater to crash? And then I'm going to have to get a new hot water heater, or I'm going to have to fix this because the firmware update doesn't work the way I expected. You forgot to patch the fridge, and now somebody's using it for middle-out encryption. Yep, I was gonna do that. It kind of all falls into that changing the battery and the smoke detector thing, I mean, like I'll do it when the alarm that the battery needs to be changed goes off, or I'll just take it down and throw it out the window. I actually did that once because I couldn't find a battery at 3 a.m. and the thing was chirping and it was driving everybody crazy. And the things where they chirp, they drive my cats crazy. They drive all of us crazy. And I actually can't hardly hear them because of all that frequency loss from firearms and guitar amps. But anyway, all this is not to mention when you update to version 7.62, your rendering software, which is on version 2.718, has to first be upgraded to version 2.35 and then version 5.8.13 in order to actually have that run on version 7.62. And oh yeah, the email server doesn't actually support version 7.62. It only supports version 7.60 currently, but okay, you get the idea. Next thing you know, all of IT is just in a pit full of dirty water with, bare wires hanging everywhere. And when they shout down and say, "Who's in charge here?" a room full of people all say, "Ain't you?" and then resume mumbling about how they stole the precious. Yeah, I get it. But the bad actors get it too, right? And then they go looking for the zero. Why do you need to find a brand new 0 day when there's plenty of good old 1 days or maybe N days laying around with instructions on how to exploit this out there for the taking? So you have to convince upper management that it's a priority. Say ransomware a lot, that helps, but it might not help. But maybe. But you may also have to shove a couple of those work smarter, not harder posters up some orifices to get the point across. But I think we're going to have to do better. The bad news is app dev doesn't really seem to be improving. Since the dev app people realized we would debug all their software for them after they already got paid for it, they realized, well, hey, you're working for them for free, so we might as well just put this out there. It really bugs me that they do this, but I know it's hard to get all the bugs out of any product. I mean, when you start talking about millions of lines of code trying to debug the whole thing, I guess crowdsourcing is more efficient. But wait, what's that I hear? Jaunty sleigh bells, reindeer? Nope, it's Litigation Guy. That's right. Litigation Guy is coming for you. And Litigation Guy is going to sue you. We just saw this week that new litigation is emerging and has been emerging regarding inconvenienced customers and clients. So Colonial's getting sued. Target paid out a big settlement. Home Depot paid out a big settlement. And what was it for? What are the suits? Well, yes, here's the new terminology: lax cybersecurity. That has worked its way into the legal guidebooks. And, lax cybersecurity turned my cat into a wolf boy. I'm going to sue. But the key word was used, and it was used in court documents, which means now it's there and can never be removed. Colonial's being sued by customers who say their businesses were ruined by lax cybersecurity. Even customers who said that high gas prices hurt them financially are suing in class action lawsuits. Litigation Guy strike. So think about it this way. When you're sitting in that deposition, and you may well be sitting in that deposition, and the lawyer says, "So Doug, I can call you Doug, right? Was the system down? Did people get exposed to high levels of lambda radiation and mutate into frogs and fruit flies? You did patch to version 3.14, or were you still running 3.10? Is that negligent? I wonder what the world would have been like for my poor clients who are now either fruit flies or frogs. Oh, and the frogs ate a bunch of the poor bastards who got the fruit fly thing. So, they would have been going about their daily business, productive citizens. You could have stopped this. Damn you all to hell. You blew it up. You blew it all up. And I just calmly say, I'm Batman. And then I wake up. But you get the idea. So start working on how you're going to patch and what level of patching you need to be to be in compliance with what kind of time frame, or you can wait for litigation, man, and the fruit flies, because they're coming. I promise. Yeah. All right, and now the news. Petipotum, which means pygmy hippopotamus, is an NTLM relay attack. I haven't heard that in a while. I mean, I saw that. I was like, NTLM? Oh, yeah, I remember that thing. But this attack can allow the takeover of a domain controller by using, an NTLM relay attack. So the NT LAN manager, or NTLM as it's called, has been vulnerable in the past, and the attacks typically exploit the traffic between devices that are using NTLM to authenticate. And basically what they do then is they create a man-in-the-middle attack that redirects the communications to a rogue server that is now treated as a trusted server. And if you do this on this particular attack called Petipotum, the domain controller actually authenticates then to a rogue domain controller, which has the effect of probably compromising the whole domain. So G. Lionel disclosed the Petipotum technique, and he goes by the name Top Potum, which I guess means top hippopotamus in French. Online, so I guess that's where the name comes from. But basically, this thing uses the MS-EFSRPC open file raw function, which is a part of that whole library, as a basis for the exploit. So the MS-EFSRPC API, EIEIO, is the Microsoft encrypting file system protocol for remote access, and it allows domain controllers to access encrypted data on other domain controllers over the network. So this is obviously a really risky thing, but it's necessary to run Active Directory with multiple domain controllers. And Lionel said that this was not a vulnerability. He said it was just an abuse of a legitimate function, which uses the machine account to authenticate. Okay. The article goes on, talks about how it may not be possible to prevent this, even if the EFS service is running. Or is not running. So turning it off means the library is still there, the API is still there, and so forth. So despite claims of mitigation, the article says it may not be possible just by disabling NTLM, if you can disable it at all, because NTLM may be needed for legacy equipment. Security researcher Remy Escarot said that you can't block Petipotum, but you can remove NTLM relay capability in the HTTP service of the PKI. Lots of acronyms there, but there is a GitHub with proof of concept materials, so check it out if you're interested in this. The tool used in the Iranian railway attack early in July is now dubbed Meteor. It was actually called Meteor Express was the old attack, but the malware that was in there, called Meteor, is a file wiping tool that is basically designed to destructively erase files. So it's not ransomware. They're not trying to get you to pay. They're just trying to hurt you. And this is very old school to me. It basically wipes files one at a time until the system crashes and likely won't boot again. This was found in the trace forensics, according to the security researchers. The attack on the Iranian train system involved trolling the schedule boards on the train stations with delays and other announcements, including doxing the supreme leader. They put the supreme leader of Iran's office phone number, I guess maybe it's a home phone number, up on some of the train station boards. The attack's being called Meteor Express and involved placing files on a shared drive. So they put up a network share the files, and then they make those available to other computers on the network and start pushing them out. Group policy was used to force a setup.bat file to execute on all the systems that were attached to the domain, and that copies the executables and the batch files down to the local machine and then runs them. So the interesting points were that it checked to see if Kaspersky was installed, and if it did, it didn't run. It drops the network connection, clears events log, and then finally it runs Meteor Wiper, which wipes files. MBR locker, which locks up the master boot record, and screen locker, which means you can't get into the machine. So you can sit back and watch it doing stuff while you frantically pound on the keyboard, hoping to try to figure out a way to do this, when you probably should be just pulling the plug, and even that may not help. But it's an old school type of attack. I was really got into reading this script. That script looked like so many of the things we used to do in the computer lab at school or in the research labs. And the article has all the scripts if you're interested in looking at them. The National Security Administration of the United States, the NSA, released guidance for Americans on how to properly secure your wireless devices when traveling or working off-site. This was really recommendations for the DOD and the DIB and the NSS and a bunch of other three-letter agencies in Washington, but you could pretty much use this stuff anywhere. The guidance includes stuff like avoiding public Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and NFC, or contactless payment devices, other close devices interaction, disabling Wi-Fi when not in use, using only HTTPS, clearing the Wi-Fi data for unused networks, and so forth. The guidance is nothing earth-shattering, but the document's really clear and it's written pretty well. So you might actually be able to actually use this, and because it comes from NSA, you can use it in your own guidance documents. There's a link to the actual document in the article on NSA, so you can check that out. PyPy, I guess that's how you say it. PyPy is the Python Package Index Registry. If you aren't a Python developer, you probably aren't familiar with it, but if you've ever worked with Python, you know that Python has many, many, many libraries and tools you can download and install as packages into Python. PyPy, who supports that, removed some of the packages this week, which were targeted to steal credit card numbers, Discord tokens, and other malicious activities. The packages had already gotten over 30,000 downloads and were posted by 3 different accounts. JFrog, a security research group, caught the packages and reported them to PyPy. This included Noblesse, I guess it's like Noblesse Oblige, Noblesse, Genesis Bot, Aria, Suffer, Noblesse 2, Noblesse V2, Pythagora, and Pythagora 2 that were posted by accounts Shing1111, Suffer, and Leonora123. I guess the point here is that you've got to be really careful with APIs and add-on products. I mean, I know I always download packages onto a sandbox VM and see what they look like. But even then, it's difficult, and it gets more difficult to ascertain what some of these things do. So and do they call libraries or lambdas as well? So you may want to vet your packages better or start working on package vetting protocols. I know when you get desperate, been there, and your code just won't do what you want to do, well, you start looking for answers. Now, in my day, I lit up an unfiltered cigarette, really. Don't do that anymore. Lit up an unfiltered cigarette and went and walked around the building for a while. But today I just jump on the old interweb and start downloading because there's a solution right there. Dr. Fix-It-Lib. I want you in my code. Get in my code right now. Get in there. And how fast can I type PIP? All my dreams come true and it works. Yep. But then, you want supply chain attacks. That's how you get supply chain attacks. But we all do it. Worrisome. U.S. Government Department of Justice has announced that they will not be banning ransomware payments, since that would cause even greater havoc. They are recommending, however, that companies be required to report incidents to them. So that's what I was saying about the Chinese thing. The FBI and the DOJ have long advised against paying ransom, since the experience is that paying may not get you the key. Paying could result in demands for more payment, so you pay them, and then they go, well, if you can pay me $5,000, pay me $10,000. Or they'll pay me $20,000, and they just keep doing that until you run out of money. Or they may, get the key. They may still release your data onto the dark web, even if you paid the ransom. So they may say, oh, that's a different ransom. I think there's a dark web service called Play. That's Yelp backwards. That rates service levels of various gangs. No, I made that up. But it's an idea. What a service. Anyway, the DOJ said that banning payment just meant there was another avenue for people to use to blackmail companies, since now they could ransomware you and then threaten to report you if you do pay, and if you don't pay. So maybe the ransom, if you pay, is higher, and I don't know. Or maybe some third party will realize that you paid or have evidence you paid, and then they'll come back and hit you for more blackmail that you paid the ransom, but now you got to pay even more. Just take my Bitcoins and go, sir. It's a stain on your house. Of course, we also know that the more people pay, the more people will get attacked, and the more attackers will come out of the woodwork to attack. Add to that, some cyber insurers are now refusing to pay ransoms and such. It's just a lose-lose all around. So make sure your backups are safe. I mean, just for a second, say to yourself, ransomware of about 2/3 of my machines is going on. What's my plan to get back online? Have I tested that? I mean, have I really tested it? If I had to start right this instant, and you probably should be thinking like this, check this, so check that out. Check out Jason's op-ed on Security Weekly News 137 about China passing requirements that sound kind of like some of this. In Dark Reading survey of 160 tech and cyber professionals in March, the main finding was that phishing attacks and common viruses were the majority of reported attacks, with phishing at 59% and common viruses at 49% on the frequency score. On the frequently occurring score. Ransomware was way on down that list, but every time I see one of these things, I've been reading a bunch of threat papers recently for a different project. I think there's major semantic problems with a lot of these surveys, and just the fact that most of these people surveyed may not even know the extent of attacks, and they just said, oh yeah, phishing happens a lot. But what does that mean? It means it's difficult to begin to fathom what's really going on. I mean, it's kind of like how crime statistics are just based on crimes we know about. If Hannibal Lecter and Jeffrey Dahmer decide to form the Cannibal Coalition and they keep getting away with it, well, they're not even going to be in the stats. But what does a phishing attack mean in context? I mean, does this mean somebody was phished, or that it was just a phishing attempt, or that they saw a phishing email? I mean, there's a Verizon report where they break it into incidents and breaches to try and delineate some of this, but it's all just semantics and in different studies. Note, I'm not saying I don't want these surveys done or that they're terrible to look at. I just think that and I do think they help, but I think there's a lot of noise in this data, since one person's phishing attack is another person's ignored log entry, is another person's ransomware attack that wiped out all the logs and record of the phishing attack. So, I don't know how that works. Microsoft has added Defender for Office to Teams. So Defender for Office to Teams, according to this article, in the form of a feature called Safe Links. The Safe Links feature was added and announced on Monday. And according to the announcement, users can now be protected from malicious link-based phishing attacks. This is the same feature that's in Office 365. So when you click a link and you're using Defender, it actually takes it goes and evaluates the link. SafeLinks itself has been around since 2015, but I guess that's kind of a slow rollout. SafeLinks is a list of URLs that are unsafe, and it has some additional features that allow for taking suspicious links and routing you to a page saying, are you sure, and so forth. They didn't have any data on how well it works. Microsoft has moved the Windows 11 development project into the beta channel with preview build 22,000.100 and is making it available on the Insiders channel. If you're on their dev or their beta channels, you can get it at this point. The new version of Windows has a new start menu, new file explorer, something called Windows Widgets. It seems like we've had that before. Virtual desktops and other new features. I remember the last time they messed with the start menu, though, and everybody was writing add-ons so you could put the start menu back on the screen and putting a button back on it and all this kind of stuff. Change is hard. My own philosophy on operating systems is to wait. I'm often an early adopter of things, but not operating systems. Early adopters are the people that get saddled with Windows ME and NT 4.0, not to mention you get to be the beta tester. It's great to run on test systems, though. So if I have a copy of it, I'll probably put it on a test system and just see what it does. I usually skip a version, though. I wouldn't mind getting back to a prime number, though, like 11. And finally, Elon Musk shook up listeners on earnings call this week by talking out loud about the full self-driving subscription for Teslas. The add-on costs $10,000, and they have a plan where you can pay $199 a month. I mean, like, if you can afford a Tesla and you can afford to buy the full drive-on, do you really need a monthly plan? I mean, could you just pay the $10,000? I mean, it's like a drop in the bucket if you're buying like a Tesla X or something. Anyway, I'm a huge fan of autonomous vehicles, and I really want one. Elon, I really want one. Elon, come on. Do me a solid, man. But you want better press from me? Send me a Tesla X over here with those carbon fiber wheels that I like. Yeah, really. Come on. Elon, call me. We'll talk. We can make a deal on it. Anyway, Elon said, quote, right now, does it make sense for someone to do a FSD subscription? I think it's debatable in a public forum, like an earnings call. So, people that are shareholders can attend these things. Oops. And then he went on to say, we need to make full self-driving work in order for it to be a compelling value proposition. Ouch. You really want your CEO saying stuff like that about a money-making part of your company. Anyway, maybe I'll just buy a Ford and drive it myself with a stick shift. And that's the news wrap-up for the week of July 25th, 2021, and the declining time of plague. We have tons of comment from Black Hat and DEF CON next week, so check all that out, and we'll see you there.